contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How do they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
All broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, and we are live on Fringe FM, fringe.fm, KTLK, digital broadcasting. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and if you want to call in, you can at any point in time during this show, which is 501-777-5631. That's 501-777-5631. And you know what? This time, if I miss your call, I'll call you back. How about that? Because you know I miss phone calls. You see that? That's where the green screen cuts off. If you guys are watching on video. I still am trying to figure all this stuff out, but it's fun to play around with. So we're back this week. We've got some more of War in Heaven to get into. We're already deep into this book. I mean, it's getting a little crazy. And the next chapter is called, Is It the Age of Aquarius? This is a big question. I have two main astrologers that come on the show. They don't always agree on things, but they give us really good info, right? And I think one of the things that I'm not sure that they agree on or not is it the age of Aquarius? Now, when we get into this book, we're going to talk about, is it the age of Aquarius? But I want to give some notifications to you guys about Gareth, because if you're just tuning in, we started this whole thing kind of inspired me because like this whole show is about void walking, which means, you know, opening your mind, stepping into the unknown, facing your fears in a practical way. That's what void walkers do. And so Gareth reached out to me, a man that is in the last stages of his life. He has ALS and doesn't mind me sharing his contact details, and he told us the story that was going on with him, right? Like, you know, first and foremost, what ALS is like, which sounds horrible, and that he would have to leave the country if he wanted to die on his own terms, leave his family, probably put his family in debt. Here's a guy that's dying and he's worried about all these things, right? So, I mean, this dude to me is like a hero to begin with. To be able to live your life with this kind of disease and still have the attitude that he has is amazing. Like, you, Gareth, are the ultimate voidwalker. I'm just going to keep, like, you're my hero, dude. And he's emailed me back. I don't know if you guys have reached out to him, but his contact details I put in there if you want to. And I'm trying to find the first email that he sent me. And let's see, the one he sent me this weekend. And the second email I saw today. We've been having internet problems out here, and I'm just happy for him. So first, I got to make this announcement, right? So he said, I had some good news over the weekend. I have to believe this is a direct response from what all of you guys' energy and love and everything that's helping him. So, and his attitude too as well. He said, I had some good news over the weekend and wanted to share it with you. I've just completed what's called an advanced decision to refuse treatment, which is an ADRT, which means that I'm entitled to not accepting any life-prolonging interventions such as tracheotomy to help me breathe or a PG to aid in feeding. I spoke with my care team, and they unequivocally stated that it is my choice when I want to end it. I can decide when the time is right to stop eating and drinking. When the decision is made, the care team will respect that. They will honor my advance directive. They can administer sedation, which will allow me to drift into sleep while they withdraw my meds, food, and water, and I shall pass away in my sleep. I got the door open, you guys. If you hear like sheep in the background, I'm sorry, or whatever. So he says, this has raised my spirits. I won't have to die in a foreign land, and I won't have to drain my family's bank account of 15,000 pounds. Such a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders. And then he asked me, lastly, could you answer me this question? I was listening to your interview with Diana Pasolka. She's extremely intelligent, as are you. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And I'll be honest, I struggle to understand a lot of it. Some people with ALS get a form of dementia, and then he puts in parentheses FTD, and I fear that this is beginning to happen to me. I can hear the words, but I struggle to process them. So here's my question. Did she mention anything about the soul? Does she believe that we're eternal beings, or does she think that the afterlife is just another AI program and that we're nothing more than some advanced AI that when we die, we cease to be? As you can gauge from the tone of that question, I fear not existing again. Although this life has been hard, I still want to live and be given another chance to enjoy the beauty of existence. You know what, man? When I first read this, I was so like choked up about this, man. I was like, it's hard to, and the email he sent me before too. So this is great news, right? Like for him, because he feared that, you know, imagine this if this were you, right? You've got ALS. You can't die the way you want to around your family, so you're going to have to go to like another place, right? Like another land alone or whatever. So this isn't going to happen to him. He gets to gauge this on his own. I think that's a great thing, man. I think probably because he stood up for himself, or I imagine I would, you know, if it were me. And I don't know, man. I just think like, and he says, much love to you, Gareth. Man, much love to you. Seriously, dude, you are a hero to me. Like, you are definitely the ultimate voidwalker, and I can speak for a lot of us that we all love you, man, and you're one of us for sure. However, I got to be honest with you. I'm going to have to go back into that episode with Diana Pasolka and listen to what she has to say about that. Because dude, I'll do an episode a week ago with somebody, and I probably won't recall half of the stuff that I talked about. Let's see who we got in the chat. What's up, Delina? Cheers from Texas. Michael says, what's up, brother? And then Ava, what's happening? Is that Dale? I don't want to pronounce anybody's name wrong. If I do, I'm sorry. And love the show. Changed my views considerably. You're a great host. Oh, you guys are great people. There's Emily. That's got to be Emily. What's up, Emily? Sir Wolf. Over on Facebook, Christy Thornsberry. What's happening? And there's Jess down there. But by the way, Jess made a gaming. Jess Rogie from Escape the Simulation Radio made a gaming Discord for anybody that wants to join it. Right? You have to put that link in there or something, Jess, so all the gamers can jump in. I hope you guys can hear me. You guys hearing me okay? Let me check something real quick. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, we're good. So I wanted to get into this, what are we in the age of Aquarius thing? Because this is a big debate, but I had to share that news with you guys, like, about Gareth, right? Because that's a big, you can only imagine, right? Like, that's got to be a huge deal to him, because I would be freaking out if I had to leave. But he also wants to thank you guys too. He said these other emails he sent me, I want to stay in touch. You and the community have been a godsend to me. What are your thoughts on the book so far? I'd be okay with all of it, apart from the soul-sucking bit. I want to live forever because this life has been so shitty to me. I want another chance. You know what, man? Speaking your truth, the way you speak your truth is probably one of the most loving things a person can do. The way you're doing it now, you know, even if you're in your last days, man, like, that's amazing. And I have to tell you, so you want to know what my thoughts are on the book. And I'm sure if you watch the videos, if they, like, sometimes you have to click on the live chat thing to get all the chat so you can see what other people think of it too. But I think that, like I said, I think there's some things in the book that might possibly be true as far as what he's saying about the reincarnation stuff, right? But as far, to me, as far as this great war going on, and I don't want people to get this confused, I'm not saying there is not evil in this world. In this world, there's definitely some diabolical shit going on in this world, for sure. So I'm not denying evil, and I'm not denying it in the spirit world. But what I would like to say about this is, what's up, Jane? What's up, Chris? Coach Chris. What's up, brother? Is that we tend to, as humans, we tend to make everything a war. So we're polar beings to begin with. And so if you notice, Hermetics, ever since the Vatican released it, has just, that knowledge has been just going up and up and up. It's like an awareness that's been spreading. The law of polarity is something that we live in. So it takes us years to even get past this law, right? I mean, if you ever hear someone argue with you, well, how can it be this and that? That doesn't make sense, right? These people are still at a polarity level awareness, right? So everything in our spirit has to be a war. There has to be something to fight against all the time. I don't necessarily think that the higher realms, wherever they are, have to be that way. I don't think just because we're conditioned in a certain way that it's going to be that way in the spirit world. Just like this invisible college versus the Theocrats, like this, also this Gnostic view of the demiurge versus the God, and this one's tricking that one and all this stuff. Could be. I'm not saying it's not, like, I'm not putting this down as fact. I know better than that. But none of us really know, if we're being really honest, right? And the most loving thing to do is be honest, because that gives us a choice when you're honest. And love represents choice. So I think intuitively, okay, I know you're going to live forever, brother. My intuition tells me that you are. Now, will you be Gareth? Will you be something else? Will you become something else? Like, I don't know. I have no idea. And if you can astral travel back and tell us, I'm sure we would all want to hear it. But we're all here with you. And here's the thing. You're not alone, because all of us are not necessarily going through what you're going through. You have to be, man, there are people that cannot handle at all what you're going through and would probably fall apart, dude. And the fact that you're just rolling the way you're rolling with this, with us, and talking to us and facing this fear the way you are, right there tells me that maybe that's something your soul, I don't know, okay? But what if that's something your soul wanted to achieve? What if when you achieve this, when you face that fear that Christ did in the Bible, even he was scared, right? Father, why have you forsaken me? In other words, that was a symbol to show us that we're all going to do this, all of us. That the way you do it, I just have a good feeling about what's going to happen next for you, bro. I really do. Delina says, if we just witness the polarity instead of becoming it, we might actually learn something. Exactly. Like, to become, I mean, that's the first stages of how people get manipulated, right? Is people try to pit you against stuff, or they put you on one side or the other. I just got into one of the biggest kind of, I don't try to get in yelling matches with my dad. My dad still has a way to bring out the Aries in me somehow, right? And I'm like, he's, yelling at me about Donald Trump, and I'm thinking about bigger things, okay? Deeper things. And I said, I don't care about this polar world. To me, you're just getting played. If you're on one side or the other, you're just getting played. I'm not saying you're right, you're wrong, or you don't have to make a choice. That's the world we live in. We got to make choices. But if you're not even aware of the box that you're in, like, how can I have a conversation with you about it? Other than just, being like, yeah, maybe you're right. But he still has a way to get me riled up. I don't know why fathers do this, but they do. He still has a way to get me riled up where I'm like, whatever, But that's how I'm just saying that's how we're built. Like, we're polar beings. So in order for us to understand something, we have to put something on the other side to relate to it. And this is like a big thing that happens in spirituality too, the ego versus the oneness awareness thing that you'll hear every spiritual influencer talk about, right? Well, you have to get rid of the ego. No. You have to, become one with everything. And really, it's both. You're here to be an individual, to live this life, to relay something back consciously, to bring an awareness through your individuality, and still be a part of everything. Well, it can be both. Just like, that's why symbols are so powerful, because they can mean many things with just one glyph. This is why we use symbols in magic and stuff like that. The last thing I want to say about that and Gareth and all this stuff is, you remember that email that you sent me where you said, I wish people would just tell their truth, say how they feel, all this other stuff. The reason why I think most people wish that deeply is because that is a part of love. When you tell people the truth, when you don't lie, deceive people, right? And we've all done it, okay? But when you don't lie and you don't deceive people, you don't hide stuff from them, when you're open with them, that means that you're giving that person that you're doing that to, like being this way to, a choice. When you take away those things, then you're giving a person an illusion and you're taking away their choice. This is why everybody under the sun is truth-seeking right now, because lies take away the love in you. If you look at the lovers, right? That whole card represents masculine, feminine, the polarity of it, the ability to make a free and open choice, and how it all works together in this triad to the holy angel spirit through male and female. When you take away those things and you cast an illusion like the devil card is, it's not love, it's a trap. This is how addiction works too. That's a whole other subject, but I think you just saying that, and my thing would be just to keep feeling that way, keep digging. It's kind of like the what is that rage against the dying of the light thing. We don't know, but it doesn't mean that we're going to stop digging to find the truth. I think it's when we start telling people bullshit, or we manipulate, lie, or deceive, or whatever, is when we take away people's choices. Therefore, we take away the love aspect of things. And 90% of the time, when people do that, they're afraid of the outcome of their truth, which Gareth, brother, and most of the listeners here, you are not. That's why I love you. All right, so we're going to get into this, the Aquarian age. First off, I want to ask people in the chat, if you can, what do you think? Do you think we're in the Aquarian age? You don't have to be like an astrologer. You don't have to be well versed or whatever. Does it feel like we are in the age of Aquarius as people speak about it? Number one. I want to know what your thoughts are. Hit me up. What's up, Abby? What's up, Genevieve? If I answer someone on Facebook or YouTube, and people on Facebook are probably confused, or like, who's he talking to? It's just because when I answer, it answers everything. All right. Well, I just burned 30 minutes with that. All right, so here he is. We're back. We're deep into this book. And after this chapter, we're going to get into things that he talks about, like hitchhiking spirits, elementals, you know, the good stuff, right? So he says, I've never believed in astrology, so I've always felt a little uncomfortable using terms like Aquarian age. Why did you let it get started in the first place? So he's already this is what trips me out about this book, Gareth, if you really want to know, brother, is right the way he has, you see his why did you let it start in the first place? The way he's summoned this whole premise is that everything that has happened on this earth at this point, if you can't tell yet, has been a manipulation of the invisible college or the Theocrats, even astrology. I don't believe that, not one bit, but we'll go with it, right? So the spirit answers him and says, we had nothing to do with putting this term into common use. However, once large numbers of people started using it entirely on their own, we invented our own mythology around the rudiments of the Aquarian age story and have been transmitting it telepathically into the subconscious minds of many different people. It now appears in messages channeled to the New Agers, in popular song lyrics, and many different places in fiction and poetry. First, here's the basic astrological myth about the Aquarian age. The age just ending was called the Piscean age, and the constellation of Pisces, or the fishes. It's an appropriate name because this was the age of Christianity, which has the fish as one of its symbols, because in the Greek that the early Christians spoke, the word for fish is also an acronym for the phrase Jesus, the anointed one, God's Son, the Savior. And the age just beginning is called the Aquarian age, after the constellation of Aquarius, which represents a human being pouring water out of a jar. Now, here's our supplemental mythology about the Aquarian age, which centers on the concept of water in this context. Water symbolizes spiritual power. During the Piscean age, the human race on Earth resembled an enormous school of fish. They were utterly dependent on water and had very little control over it. They simply lived in it and hoped to survive. The New Age symbol is the human being taking control of the water, which also represents spiritual power. Interesting. However, if you take a closer look at the astronomical mythology represented by the constellations, you'll see that the water poured out by the water carrier is the source of the great celestial river, the constellation Eridanus, which runs from the celestial equator far down in the southern sky. This huge outpouring of spiritual power represents several things we'll cover in part 3. The apocalyptic events that will free the human race on this planet from theocracy, and the birth of the new gods. That's another thing too, is not just a war all the time, but there has to be an ending or an apocalypse. I mean, I wonder how long we're going to talk about this apocalypse until we totally manifest it, right? But I think he made some good points there, actually. What he said about the age of Aquarius and Christianity, what he said about the constellation, what it means, all that stuff. So he asked the Spirit again, he says, well, it's details like this that I need for the book. Even if they're not directly connected to the point being discussed, they prove that there's an external creative intelligence behind many of the intuitive flashes that inspire people to create modern mythologies. Spirit answers him and says, another example concerns several modern UFO researchers who receive telepathic communications containing words in an unknown language from sources that identified themselves as space people. Occultists later identified the words as belonging to the Enochian language. Over 300 years ago, the English occultist John Dee received a long series of channeled messages in the language, and occultists still study it today. The reason we telepathically transmit Enochian words like Afa, meaning very appropriately nothing to the ufologists, was to steer their thinking in certain directions. We knew that if they published these words or repeated them very much, someone with occult knowledge would tell them where they came from. It was just another way of supplying evidence that there is a connection between what modern ufologists call telepathic contact with space people and the mediumistic communication with spirits that occultists have been practicing throughout history. Even the evidence, to guide them, most of the ufologists remain materialists. Y'all heard that sheep that time, didn't you? We keep telling them the invisible college is composed of disembodied spirits. We're dead people, not living beings from other planets. Some of us extraterrestrials, yes, but we're extraterrestrial spirits, not living people. We keep telling them this whenever we are in telepathic contact. And they keep right on theorizing about interstellar space travel and other dimensions. Next, let us tell you about the so-called Sirius connection, which you mentioned in part 1 without ever quite figuring out what we were doing. This was a complicated ploy of exactly the same type as the one we just mentioned. We started sending telepathic messages like Sirius is very important. When we found out that news of the explicit astronomical knowledge about the invisible companion of Sirius in the Sudanese Dogon tribe's mythology was about to surface. Well, I bet Laird Scranton would find that interesting, right? In the early 70s, when we started sending such messages, the same information that later appeared in the Sirius mystery was already known to certain anthropologists and members of the occult and UFO communities, especially French-speaking ones. This information is extremely impressive because it contains the period of revolution of the companion around the larger star and the fact that this companion star is composed of superdense matter. The information contains enough detail to make coincidence unlikely, and there is evidence that the Dogon possessed it before Western scientists did. Okay. So when I first read the Sirius mystery, he says, I tended to dismiss the whole thing as a hoax by the Dogon. I speculated that some of them had heard the astronomical information about Sirius from some passing trader only a few years before they told it to the anthropologists. A lot of the traders in that area were Arabs, and amateur astronomy has always been popular hobby in Arab culture. And the Spirit says, no. The Dogon got the information centuries ago. They may or may not have gotten it secondhand from the ancient Egyptians, but they could have. This and many other pieces of advanced astronomical and astrophysical information have been in circulation among free spirits for thousands of years. Well, this kind of reveals that, to me, he's still channeling his thoughts about what really happened and calling it a spirit, because if the invisible college really is what they've been claiming they are in this book, there would be no question if they had gotten it secondhand from the Egyptians or not. They would just know. So you're showing your hand a little bit, but that's all right. I don't understand why not. Why don't you just write this book and say, this is what I intuitively think, and just be honest, So he asked the spirit, he said, I begin to get the point. You sent out telepathic messages about Sirius to get the materialists like Wilson, Leary, and various ufologists to listen to you. Knowing they'd encounter the information quite soon, I assume you knew in advance that the Sirius mystery was being written. And the spirit answers him and says, well, it's more complicated than that. If we hadn't started the telepathic communication, several of these people would have accepted the information about Sirius and the Dogon as hard proof of physical visitations to Earth by ancient astronauts. As it was, we complicated the issue in their minds and may have kept them from seriously misleading the significant number of people who regard their opinions as authoritative. So more BS. Like, we don't know. Still fun to talk about, though. The question, so when you say, I'm sure we're going to get around to the Aquarius thing, right? Like, we hadn't got there yet, but so when you say complicated the issue, are you talking about R.A. Wilson's making a connection between the modern Sirius mystery and the great star legends of the Masons, Rosicrucians, and various occult groups? Yes, the spirit says. The great star is also the great secret, a version of the truth about theocracy. This same symbolism is also being used by a number of different factions of spirits and living people involved in the psychic warfare to be described in part 3. For example, some of them call themselves cats or lions and refer to certain other types of spirits as dogs or Syrians. These terms refer to different details of physiology of the astral soul, and there are spirits of each type in the service of both Theocrats and Invisible College. Okay. So far, it could just be a big, I guess, a reset maybe? Could be. So Abby thinks that Ava says, Delina says, we're in the nutso age. I hope I'm saying, is that Ava? Hope I'm saying your name right. It says, I think we are in the Aquarian age. Abby says, there's an energy shift for sure. Whether that means it's the age of Aquarius, I hope so. Yeah, you could be talking about a reset. What's up, Wisdom Keeper? Thanks for joining us. Okay, so he asked the spirit. I also see another possible tie-in here. Ever since R.E. Wilson wrote the Illuminatus books, he's had a following composed mostly of counterculture people who publish underground magazines devoted to discussing his work and similar to material by Leary Burroughs, etc. Some of these people were part of the 60s LSD movement at the time when the media were full of anti-drug propaganda claiming that LSD damaged the chromosomes and the children of everyone who used it would be born deformed or mutated. My own opinion at the time was not to take these claims seriously because they were supported by insufficient evidence, and history seems to have proven me right. The assertion that LSD caused physical mutations seemed to be entirely false, but this didn't stop certain members of the 60s counterculture from taking this mutation propaganda and turning it completely around. Well, weren't they saying in the 60s and 70s that was the age of Aquarius? They had a song about it and stuff too, right? Like, I was born in 82, so I don't know. But I hear people that are older than me, they start singing that song, and I'm like, what? They thought they were in the age of Aquarius then, right? You have to correct me on that too. But so he says, in other words, they admitted that LSD causes mutations and not in the descendants of people who take the drug, but in the users themselves. Mutations. And of course, they claim that these mutations were extremely beneficial, turning acid heads into supermen. Now, I had enough scientific knowledge and plain common sense to dismiss these claims as obvious nonsense, typical of the altering delusions of persecution and grandeur so common in the counterculture at the time. And on the purely physical level, nothing has happened since to convince me that my snap judgment was wrong. No flashbacks, dude? You never had any flashbacks? How much acid did you take? Did you take enough? You sure? However, the belief that acid heads are mutants in a literal sense or a physical sense, and therefore superior to ordinary people, has never died out with the counterculture. It seems commoner. Well, they're called psychonauts now. It seems commoner in the counterculture today than it was in the 60s. Is the Invisible College responsible for this? Was this another manipulation? Right? Guess what he says. Now, remember, both sides, he already told us in the book that both sides are manipulating in this war. The Theocrats are the nasty soul-sucking ones that are, making you believe in gods and stuff. And the Invisible College only manipulated you for your benefit because they knew you didn't know any better. Okay? That's where we're at with that. So he says, is the Invisible College responsible for this? And the Spirit says, yes. Some of the people who are going to read this book and other explicit writings about the war in heaven, and who are going to make the breakthrough and join the movement to teach others the truth about the nature of spiritual reality, are going to describe themselves as mutants of this type. He says, well, personally, he says to the Spirit, I feel more like an alien than a mutant. Everybody says that, man. I feel like an alien. I don't belong here. I have past life memories set on other worlds, and I really don't feel comfortable in any cultural group on this planet. Don't get me started on that. There is no individual like you on this planet. And even though you don't believe in astrology, if you looked at the complicated energy of your birth chart, you would realize this. Just like there is no snowflake like anybody else. It does not make you an alien. Makes you special. Not that special. You're special as everybody else is, right? Everybody says that, though. I mean, I've said that before until I was like, okay, well, this is what being an individual is. So the Spirit says, this is because you're here to help in the building of an entirely new and more advanced civilization on Earth. And a large number of people who call themselves mutants are also of extraterrestrial origin. That's another thing you'll want to concentrate on in your future writings, helping these people realize who they are and what they're on this planet to do. To help you realize you're an alien. Okay, I think I can finish this before the first radio break here. How much of this has been about, see, the title, this is like when you get on YouTube and then you click on a title and nothing. Where are we going to get to the Age of Aquarius stuff? Here's a question I asked before and I didn't get answered. I'll try to ask it again because it pertains directly to the subject of mutants. During the 60s, Timothy Leary often said that LSD helps people unlock cosmic secrets that are encoded in our DNA. And at the time, I found this concept completely incomprehensible, but he's still saying the same thing today. For example, he said in Neurologic just a few years ago that most of the characteristics formerly attributed to the soul now describe the functions of DNA, whose complex messages originate from higher intelligences in the solar systems. The mission of DNA is to evolve nervous systems able to escape from the doomed planet and contact manifestations of the same amino acid seeding that have evolved in other solar systems. What is the relationship between the concept in this quotation, the acid mutants, and the cosmology that you've already given? So Leary is trying to sum this up, is stating that our DNA is trying to evolve into a higher form of DNA. That's what its job is trying to do. And so the Spirit answers him, said, first of all, there was never a physical seeding of amino acids to start organic life. What actually happened was that disembodied spirits went to planets that were ready for life to develop and created the amino acids by telekinetic manipulation of existing organic molecules. Well, that explains it a lot more, doesn't it? They assembled these amino acids into physical DNA using their own astral DNA molecules as templates. When Leary and other scientists theorized that physical DNA contains an evolutionary program that automatically causes new species to develop, they're slightly misinterpreting messages that we put in their subconscious minds. Yeah, because, you're manipulating everything. They didn't think of that themselves at all. What we are actually trying to tell them is that evolution is guided by the psychic manipulations of disembodied spirits, but most such scientists are still too materialistic to accept such an explanation. Their conscious minds are unwilling to admit the literal existence of the soul and other spiritual phenomena. So they try to stretch theories from physical science to fit the evidence they discover. I totally agree with that. This sometimes causes non-scientists who read their works to engage in speculations about evolution and mutation that stray very far from reality. What we're really telling all these people is simply, quote, try to develop conscious control over your psychic powers during your present lifetime, so you'll have a better chance of surviving after death. There's the key sentence right there that probably scared my man Gareth, right? If you don't, it's kind of like saying, if you don't develop your psychic powers, you may get your soul sucked when you die. LSD and other psychedelic drugs are a dangerous but useful tool for doing this, and so are many psychic training practices derived from occultism and religion. We do want people to evolve, but the evolution is spiritual, not physical. However, there's a lot more to the war in heaven than just a struggle between the invisible college and the theocratic spirits who operate through organized religion and try to retard material progress towards an advanced civilization on this planet. During the last 5 years, and he's saying retard as slow down. He's not calling anybody retards, but during the last 5 years, as this book was being written, the power of the religious theocrats to influence the evolution of Western society has steadily declined. Well, that's good to know. But that does not mean the spiritual revolution is going to be quick, easy, or bloodless. What's actually been going on during the last 20 years is that the theocrats are preparing to achieve their final goal. Throughout recorded history, the theocrats have falsely pretended to be gods, and now, because of the Earth's extremely high and unstable population, they actually have a chance to assume godlike powers. This is what the war in heaven is really about, and this is what we will describe in part 3. So here's the Aquarian. He calls this chapter the Aquarian Age. I'm curious, do you guys feel like he talked about that in like 2 sentences? That's it. I feel like I've been misled a little bit. Just a little bit. Let's see. All right. We have to take a radio station break here, just a few minutes, and then we'll be back. But the next chapter is pretty cool. I like the title. It'll be fun at the very least to get into. It is called Hitchhiking Spirits. The second breakthrough, part 3, Hitchhiking Spirits. That's an interesting thing to talk about, isn't it? If you want to call in, you can call in at 501-777-5631. If you want to chime in anytime, you can also drop a line in the chat, Facebook, YouTube, and the Telegram. All the links are in the previous YouTube descriptions. You could also email Gareth there as well. I'll put all those links there as well. We'll be right back.
enjoy a hearty, nutritious meal of baked meatloaf even while you take a shower. Meatloaf on a string is 100% waterproof, and it tastes great. So pick up your own meatloaf on a string today and watch for our newest product, Anvil on a Chain.
The future of medicine is already here. Protect yourself and those around you from the effects of electromagnetic radiation and recharge your body with life energy. This is your chance to take control of your balance, your quality of life, and your future. The effects of syntropic products have been verified from a scientific point of view and can be backed up with research. This is Future Technology, a biotech enterprise with breakthrough technologies that facilitate the protection, regeneration, and recharging of both human and animal populations. These patented wellness devices can help optimize energy and performance, speed up regeneration, and protect you from the harmful effects of non-thermal e-smog. Get back to feeling your best with a new level of clarity, vitality, and balance with the advanced and effective products of Syntropics. It's as Albert Einstein said, the future is here, and future medicine will be the medicine of frequencies. Get started on your wellness journey by going to advancedwellnesstechnology.com or fringe.fm/bioenergy.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Honorary Forest Ranger Betty White here, lending a hand to my dear friend Smokey Bear, because for years he's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But there's a lot more to say. Like if you park your car on tall, dry grass, the hot exhaust pipe can start a wildfire. So keep the animals safe, especially the cute shirtless one. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the ad comes.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. That's doihaveprediabetes.org.
Wait, did they just say 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes? That's 33.33333% of adults. That means it could be me, my boss, or my boss's boss, or me, my favorite sister, or my other sister. That's 7 members of my 21-person romantic book club. Wait, the 1 in 3 could be me, my karaoke partner Carol, or my karaoke enemy Jeff. I'm going to take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Want more of The Fringe? Check out thefringe.fm for more information on your favorite shows. Also, don't forget to check out the Fringe mobile app or the other ways you can tune in through the Paranormal Radio app and TalkStream Live. Where the normal and paranormal collide, it's The Fringe FM.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by General Jitterbug's Kentucky Fried Leftover Chicken Parts, the place to go when you've got a hankering for some good old-fashioned Southern fried chicken necks and innards. Just look for that big neon chicken gizzard in the sky.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void Radio live here on Fringe.fm, www.fringe.fm. We need your donations to keep going. And some people that have donated, thank you very much. We've been playing catch up for the past few months, so you guys that have donated are really, like, there was a time there, I think it was maybe, it's still kind of happening, but not like it was. I was like, oh God, everything is about to get shut off. And the Fringe FM is my heart and home, but if it's always been mainly listener supported. Most of the ads that we play are people that have gotten sponsorship months and months out, and they're the ads we have to play to keep the licensing going. So I want to get to a point where the donations are enough where we don't have to play like any ads, but some people like the commercials. That's weird. Everybody I know hates commercials. So for anybody to say that, I was like, okay. But someone asked in the chat, how have you been misled? You mean in general, or just by are you talking about the chapter? Because the chapter was titled The Age of Aquarius, and the guy spoke about the age of Aquarius for one sentence. But you guys in the chat have spoken more about your feelings on the age of Aquarius, if that's what you're asking, have spoken more about the age of Aquarius than that guy did. But we're about to get into the hitchhiking spirits. And like I said, you can call anytime during the show at 501-777-5631 if you want to tune in. But I don't think anybody has any substantial proof that we're in the age of Aquarius. I hear that it's a toss-up. Although when I did launch this video, I didn't know I was supposed to schedule it or whatever. And some guy typed in that Elon Musk is making some breakthroughs with the human conscious connection. So that's a little creepy. But maybe it is, man. You know? It has to be at some point, right? All right, Hitchhiking Spirits. I may have to retitle this thing Hitchhiking Spirits when this is over. So he asks the spirit. Yeah. So he asks the spirit, he says, it is now time for the Invisible College to tell Earth people the whole truth about the nature of spiritual beings, especially the basic cosmology about the origin and destiny of the human soul. We told you to leave the material in the next few chapters out of Spiritual Revolution because we did not want to describe certain things we intend to do in the future. This is the spirit, not him, by the way. To do in the future before we were fully prepared to do them. These technical preparations have now been completed. Our psychic network for fighting theocracy is now in place and already exchanging fire with the enemy, so it's now safe to tell more. Jeffrey Goodman's Hitchhiking Spirits theory is a good way to begin. So, he goes on to ask the spirit, he says, hitchhiking spirits, the hitchhiking spirits they described in the Genesis mystery is actually quite vague. For example, Goodman doesn't try to explain the ultimate origin of organic life, but deals mostly with the development of modern human beings out of pre-humans. When I read the book, I assumed that if his interventionist theory of evolution is valid at all, it should apply to the entire course of evolution, including the creation of life itself. Many of the modern biochemical experiments that have tried to simulate the creation of life out of non-living matter have shown that the probabilities of it happening by chance alone are so low that it's responsible to dismiss this theory as invalid. I have assumed for a long time that spiritual beings intervened in the creation of life on Earth, as well as in the creation of modern humans. However, this raises several additional questions. How did these spirits get here? And why would they want to travel to planets without organic life? You have already explained that the soul is nourished on energy from the body and that spirits have to incarnate or they will starve. So why would they go to a place where they couldn't survive? Valid question. And the spirit says, ordinary human spirits don't do it deliberately. Some advanced civilizations have a form of rapid interstellar travel that makes it possible for disembodied spirits to travel from one world to another at speeds much faster than the speed of light. When they get to their destination, they incarnate there. However, such interstellar travel by spirits involves risks, and they sometimes get lost in transit and end up on a planet other than the one they intended to visit. If the equipment needed to project spirits over interstellar distances does not exist there, they are marooned. If spirits find themselves marooned on a planet devoid of life, they eventually die, unless other spiritual beings are able to rescue them. This we'll discuss further later. So, I guess that just happens, right? I mean, that's kind of how my family ended up I got to think that's how my family ended up in Ico, Arkansas, right? They were probably headed to California or something and was, got marooned. And same thing happens to spirits, I guess. Hitchhiking, Chris says, what's up, Dragon Rose? Chris says, hitchhiking spirits sounds like possession. Yeah, it does. And Genevieve says, thoughts travel faster than light. Okay. Ordinary human spirits do it deliberately. Really? He says. Wait, did we already say that? When they get to their destination, they incarnate there. Such interstellar travel spirits then risk. Yeah, we already said that. So he asks the spirits, he says, the universe consists almost entirely of empty space. Don't most of the maroon spirits end up in interstellar space with only a few landing on planets at all? And the spirit answers him and says, no, the interstellar transportation process doesn't work like that. Travel can occur only if there is a large mass of physical matter at the other end. However, the spirit will still pass through the process even if the mass isn't the one intended as its destination. Man, I got to think with all this, I'm sorry, but I got to think with all of this, mass manipulation and high intelligence and all that. Now you're just telling me that spirits can just get spewed out sometimes and they get lost and just end up on some crazy place somewhere. I don't know, man. Look, I'm broadcasting from a shack, so if you hear, I have to apologize. If you hear dogs, sheep, crickets, frogs, any of that in the background, nothing I can do about it. I can't help it. It's driving me crazy, though. So, question. I assume that maroon spirits use their psychic powers to start creating organic life, even though they realize they won't survive long enough to benefit from this process. Yes, the spirit says, there's a lot more to it than that. We gave a very incomplete version earlier to you and to others on your planet. Then we said that some advanced civilizations of the past have had a sort of religion that encouraged people to go around the universe creating organic life on every planet that was geologically ready for it. This is a true statement as far as it goes, but what we didn't mention is that such civilizations were very different from ours, as different as a colony of social insects such as bees or ants is from a herd of horses or a pack of wolves. We also mentioned that the civilizations that sent out such original missions of creation seem to be enemies of the civilizations ancestral to our own. Another war. And that our ancestors were partly responsible for driving them away. But we didn't tell the full story. Let's leave this subject for a later chapter and continue describing how spirits create organic life on planets that are ready for it, and then guide the process of evolution until intelligent beings develop. However, we should point out that everything we say about the origin and evolution of life on Earth is just scientific speculation. We're reasonably sure it's accurate, but it's not based on detailed historical records. What? So you don't know? The spirit does not know the answer to that. It could be speculation. Now I feel like I'm talking to myself. This book's starting to make me a little crazy. She says, so why don't you have access to the histories of all the advanced civilizations going back millions of years? Surely all such societies would have sophisticated equipment for strong information, better than our present computers have here on Earth, so my assumption would be that information about all of them would be easy to obtain. Even if civilizations are always rising and falling, communication between them should ensure that history and other information gets passed along. After all, we Earth people, primitive as we are, still possess many important written records of our own vanished civilizations. Or perhaps, author of this book, you can't fully come up with something that sounds great, so we're going to twist it. I'm just saying, you know, that could be a thing too. We're going to twist this whole thing. Being a little, what do you call it? Cynical. My bad. He says, the Spirit says, well, you have a few written records from the ancient Greeks, Hindus, Chinese, etc., but there are still huge gaps in your knowledge. For example, what percentage of the ancient Greek poems, plays, histories, and scientific works that you know the titles and authors of from referencing and surviving works have been lost? He says, I can't even guess at the figures, but I get your point. Much of it has been lost, then has survived. Does the same apply to electronic data storage as used by advanced civilizations then? I'm surprised that such people have not worked out methods for storing information for very long periods of time. Advanced civilizations don't use electronic computers, nor do they store much of their data in durable physical forms equivalent to books, photographic film, sound recordings, etc. The equipment they use to store and process information is made of living organic matter and is relatively fragile, so it's not that hard for specific historical knowledge to be lost. Oh. A very sci-fi way of explaining lost data there. Also, the symbolic systems for storing data are neither alphabetic nor digital, but are versions of the system used for memory storage in the human brain. Such systems are extremely complex, and translation from one system to another is often very difficult. As long as a particular civilization is viable, it retains the information that people in it want to retain. If it breaks up, the souls of the people who survive the breakup go to other civilizations, which have their own history, their own store of information they consider valuable. So specific information about a particular planet is often not yet available. That is a very long explanation, brother, of this. I'm sorry, man, but right here, this point right here. If you guys think that there is any, I mean, this sounds completely made up. Like, I'm not saying it's not true, but this is sounding completely made up. Like, I'm going to make up this whole reason why this person this is what it sounds like to me. I'm going to make up this whole reason why this person the Spirit cannot tell me the history of these planets and civilizations. He just can't. So I have to give them this is BS. This is a very good imaginative explanation, but it's so out there that I can't say, yeah, that's true, or no, it's not true. It's just far out there. Like, look, man, being a voidwalker doesn't mean believe everything that we're told. That's the opposite of what it means. The fact that we're voidwalking means we want to experience the truth, right? This is a very far out, and if you're mad at me for saying this, then I'm speaking to Gareth because he's asking. This is a far-fetched explanation right here. Doesn't mean it's not true, though. Could be. Maybe it is the Spirit telling him this stuff. Okay, so he says, while we're talking about the remote past, what about the creation of the universe? And the Spirit says, well, the universe is cyclical. It really doesn't have a beginning or an end. The Big Bang Theory, which most of your scientists now accept as proven, is valid, but it's just one component of a steady state theory that operates on a larger scale. There is another parallel part of the universe which is contacting toward a big crunch at the point where and when Earth astronomers observe evidence of the Big Bang, the big crunch. The part of the universe is composed of antimatter, and this time flows backwards there. The heat death points in our own part of the universe. The heat death points in our own part of the universe, the points where particles of matter lose all their energy and motion. Also, the points at which particles become antimatter and pass into other parts of the universe to start falling towards the big crunch. In other words, the universe didn't really have an origin at all. There wasn't a point in time when the universe didn't exist, because the very definition of time is a measurement of changes in matter and energy. Therefore, time cannot exist unless matter and energy also exist. It is simply a dimension as length, breadth, and height are dimensions, and this makes it a part of the universe, not something independent of it. Now, let's get back to our discussion of the creation of evolution of life by saying that the astral souls of all intelligent beings contain a template for the DNA molecule and all the precursor chemicals that compose it. If the surface waters of an Earth-like planet are close to the correct temperature and have the right chemicals dissolved in them, disembodied spirits with the proper technical knowledge can create life by psychokinesis alone. There is no need to visit planets and spaceships and seed them physically. Wouldn't that be a trip, right? Like if that was true, because everybody's, how did life get seeded here? You know, you hear the Prometheus story and all this other stuff, right? What was it? Grant Morrison saying that he met aliens when he went on I think he went on a trip, or he was experimenting with chaos magic or something. He said he met aliens and they implanted larvae. And this spirit is saying that no, they're not aliens. It's not some Prometheus story. It's disembodied spirits astrally encoding and creating life through psychokinesis. That sounds like a cool story too, right? I say, so he's asking the spirit, he says, is this organic life always of the same type as on Earth? In other words, is DNA as we know it the basis for all life in the universe? No, the spirit says. There are other kinds of organic life on the surfaces of other kinds of planets, and also non-organic forms who live in the interiors of stars, comets, gas clouds, and other bodies of matter. They all have different kinds of souls, composed of different kinds of astral matter, and there is almost no communication between the different kinds of life. That kind of sounds a little true based on Robert Monroe's experiences in the astral realm, because he ran into all kinds of weird beings, different beings and things. And a lot of times, I mean, just go with me here. I'm not saying it's true, but a lot of times we do think like, well, we haven't found life on Mars or Venus or any of that yet. Samuel M. Vior talked about the same thing in his Gnostic books, that these life forms are not, because we're looking for life forms like ours. Naturally, we do that as humans. Everything out there has to be kind of like us. Bipedal, physical. It doesn't have to be. It could just be a blob of astral matter that communicates telepathically, for all we know, that's living on Venus. So he says, why is this? He's asking the spirit. Can't they communicate telepathically even if a soul from one type of environment can't incarnate in a body from another? And he answers him and says, this is barely possible, but not really feasible, because the different types of organic and astral life use very different kinds of symbols to communicate, and also think at different rates of speed. Well, this sounds similar to a problem that people here on Earth can have with electronic computers. It's often difficult to exchange data between two computers because they have different kinds of processing units, internal clock speeds, or software. However, it's almost always possible to design additional hardware and software that will allow data exchanges between the two computers. Can't advanced human civilizations invent equipment for communicating with these other forms of life? The spirit says, well, your analogy doesn't really apply. All of your computers were designed by and for human beings. The common denominator between two different computers is the person who understands both. There's no such common denominator between people in vastly different forms of intelligent life. I get what he's saying there. So he goes on and he tells the spirit, he says, all right, well, please continue explaining how intelligent life is created. Especially, I'd like to know more about the relationship between the body and the soul. So this is a long one here. So he goes, the spirit says, the human astral soul is both an alien parasite or symbiote and a natural part of a human being. All mammals have astral souls, but the astral soul of a human being is extremely different from the astral soul of an ape. Human beings were radically altered by psychokinetic genetic manipulation to become physically different from other apes. The brain, the hands, the sense organs, the general musculature, and the organs used in standing and walking erect are all very different in humans than they are in apes. However, the scientists who recently started mapping the DNA structure of anthropoid apes found it much more similar to that of humans from what they had expected. And when the genetic science begins to learn the details of how random mutations usually change the DNA structure, the scientists will discover that the genetic differences between apes and humans don't fit the usual patterns. They realize that the particular loops in the DNA molecule that causes the genetic differences between people and apes have an artificial or alien look to them. That's because they actually are artificial. Changes made by spirits from other worlds that were familiar with genetic patterns different from those on Earth. The somatic soul of the human species was genetically altered just as radically as the body, and is also very different from the somatic soul of an ape. The human somatic soul's nervous system is much more highly developed for transmitting and using astral energy, and the attachment point for the astral soul is much more highly developed. This attachment point allows any human astral soul to incarnate, including those used to incarnating in bodies very different from human bodies on Earth. In other words, there's a sort of standardization among human-type bodies on many different worlds to allow them to be linked in a wide variety of astral souls. There are often problems of astral tissue compatibility if body and soul are too different, but it is still possible for many different types of astral souls from many different worlds to incarnate on Earth. That's pretty interesting. So what if all the animals were really alien? It's alien DNA, right? That's why there's so many weird looking animals like what about the platypus, right? Where the hell did that come from? Or the freaking squid. Those things gotta be aliens, right? Nasty things. But they're still smart. Anyway, it's a pretty good point. One of the chief characteristics of intelligent beings compared with similar non-intelligent beings is that both the body and the astral soul show strong evidence of, what's this word? Neoteny? Neoteny? Neoteny. Never heard of that before. For example, many scientists on Earth have noticed that an adult human being retains many physical characteristics found in an anthropoid ape during infancy or childhood, but lost it as it matures. When a neotenous salamander, like an axolotl, retains its gills while becoming sexually mature, the resulting adult is physiologically more primitive, meaning that there's less specialization of the tissues and organs than in a normal adult of the same species. Human beings are physiologically more primitive than other large primates such as gorillas, baboons, or chimpanzees. This is especially true of the voluntary musculature. Yeah, freaking a chimp, or especially apes, man. Gorillas will rip you apart. It is well known that all the great apes far exceed human beings in strength because of the differences in muscle structure. Notice, too, that there is a marked gender difference in humans and in muscle structure as well. The adult female, with her smoother voluntary muscles and a more extensive layer of subcutaneous fat, is more primitive and more neotenous. I hope I'm saying that word, than an adult male. This is getting weird, man. So, getting fringy up in here, isn't it? So he says, yes, he says to the spirit, and I've also read that all human embryos start out as somatically female, and that a fetus with an XY chromosome develops male characteristics later. The spirit answers him and says, well, many technologically advanced races of people use genetic engineering, modification of the genes before conception, and biological engineering, which is modification of the body during embryological development by the use of hormones and other chemicals. They do this to repress the development of the secondary sexual characteristics and to increase the neotenous characteristics. This is why so many dreams and visions of space people show them as rather androgynous. So he says, what is the advantage in neoteny? What do Earth people gain from not being as strong as other great apes, and why would advanced people want to be weaker still? The spirit answers him and says, there are 3 reasons why humans living under primitive conditions were genetically engineered to have less sheer muscle strength than apes. The first is that this is called hitchhiking spirits, right? Did we talk about hitchhiking spirits? We did, right? The traveling hitchhiking spirits, I think, that are trying to get to other planets, and we did. But this is still in that chapter, I'm just saying. The first is that if the process is properly done, they gain considerably in coordination, and are much better at doing delicate manipulations with their hands. Second, having less muscular strength stimulates people's intellectual development by encouraging them to use tools and develop technology. And third is that neoteny significantly slows down the maturation and aging process, giving people more time to develop their minds than animals have. Since humans are physically immature and dependent on others for so long while they are growing up, this also gives them an opportunity to learn many things from their elders that they might not learn if they became independent adults sooner. Advanced human civilizations inhibit the secondary sexual characteristics and certain kinds of muscular development even more for exactly the same reason. They gain a longer lifespan, better general health and physical equality between the genders, and they lose very little because they don't need great physical strength nearly as much as they need good balance, agility, and coordination. If such a body is kept in good general muscle tone, it has great endurance against fatigue than a more heavily muscled body and is more resistant to many kinds of injuries. Also, most advanced human societies reproduce entirely by ectogenesis, so there is no need for people to be capable of ordinary mammalian reproduction. This is all like a very intelligent answer to his question, don't you think? Like, it seems like it is, but it still could be bullshit. Right? But that was impressive. Like, I wonder if this dude was really, like, a long time ago before he got into writing this book, if he's like smoking weed and he's like, wait, if we were seated here, why did they make us weaker than apes? Like, why would God do that, or whatever what reason would that be? And then he just kept hitting the weed, and all this stuff came out. And now later he wrote it in a book talking to spirits. Seems more likely. It's a really cool answer though, right? Some readers will interpret the last sentence as implying that advanced human societies have eliminated sex entirely. I know this isn't true because of my past life memories, but you still should explain the subject further. So the spirit answers him and says, most advanced societies have separated sexuality from reproduction. Why create the human body by having it grow inside an adult as a parasite when it can be, that's terrible, when it can grow much more efficiently in an artificial environment? Notice the paradoxical attitude that so many Earth women have about being or bearing children. On one hand, they know the future of the human race may depend on it, but on the other, they also know it's damaging to the body and seriously interferes with other aspects of adult life. Especially pregnancy and child rearing are ready-made excuses for placing women in an inferior social status. Says who? No, magazines back then? This was written in the 90s, right? However, sexuality itself still exists and in all advanced human societies for emotional, social, and psychic reasons. The androgynous people you see in your dreams are all sexually functional males or females. On the average, advanced humans tend to be more sexually active than primitive humans because their physical and mental health are better, and because they don't have to work as hard for basic survival. So they don't have to work as hard. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to have sex more, right? This explains a lot of things I've guessed and wondered about all my life. This is what he's saying to the Spirit. This explains everything. Now, please try to tell us the whole truth about gods. He puts it, gods in quotations, and the original creation of human beings. I'd especially like to get a more detailed explanation of the fragmentary messages I've gotten over the years asserting that the human astral soul is a parasite or symbiote. Do godlike beings actually exist? And if so, why have you been so insistent all the time I've been writing this book that I say they don't exist? And the Spirit answers him and says, well, yeah, I mean, he already answered that to you. So he says, we thought we had already explained why many Earth people have an instinctive feeling that the soul is an alien parasite attached to the body, but we'll try to make it clear. The somatic soul of a human being contains many structures not found in the soul of other primates. Some of these produce a form of neoteny in the body. Others could cause the brain to develop into a high-quality biocomputer, and still others allow astral souls of many different types to incarnate in human bodies. This gives many people the feeling that there is something alien about the soul. The reason we said earlier that gods don't exist is that statement is completely true in the context in which we are using it. Throughout human history on Earth, some spirits have pretended to be gods, using a definition of the term that allows them to rule over human beings without being accountable for their actions. These definitions assert that gods are greatly superior to humans in wisdom and morality, encouraging people to let deities deny them their rights to consent of the governed. However, the human spirits making these claims are simply lying. Book said it, not me. They are not superior to ordinary people except in possessing certain forms of knowledge and power. And in moral terms, they are significantly inferior because their very existence depends on enslaving and exploiting living people and other disembodied spirits. That's something to think about. Since pretending to be gods is one of the chief sources of theocratic power, we have had to attack it very strongly in part 2. Now it is time for us to look at spiritual reality from an even larger perspective, and to deal with the idea that intelligent beings greater than humans actually exist. There are 2 types: elementals and gods. And we will start describing them in the next chapter. However, let us end this chapter by saying that everything we've said previously about gods and human rights still stands. The elementals and gods we are about to describe are still not morally superior to humans, and it is our duty, the duty of advanced human civilizations on other worlds and people on Earth as well, to stand up to these beings and demand our rights as sovereign individuals. You know, man, I'm going to say, Gareth, that a lot of this stuff sounds like I could see. I told you guys, the deeper I get into this book, the more he'd sell me on stuff. Sounds incredibly intelligent. Like some of the articulation and how he's explaining all this, the description of things, just the context of it all. It's an amazing description of all this stuff. Like, I'll bite a little bit on some of it. But this might actually be, if you think about it, the best heretical text and rebellious text I've ever read in my entire life. From a Christian point of view, if you're Christian, right? I mean, if you're Christian, you would probably, like, this is Satan talking the whole time, right? Like, this is interesting stuff, though. Nonetheless, it's still very interesting. Last break of the night, another quick one. If you can, support us. By God, call in, chime in. I'm just reading, man. That's all I'm doing is reading and commenting. I got no other skin in the game. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
WDLK The Fringe FM.
Honorary Forest Ranger Betty White here, lending a hand to my dear friend Smokey Bear, because for years he's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But there's a lot more to say. Like if you park your car on tall, dry grass, the hot exhaust pipe can start a wildfire. So keep the animals safe, especially the cute shirtless one. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Musicians experience a lot of frustration with music marketing and promotion. They have no idea how to get their music heard, and they're spending hours sending emails, making phone calls, and hitting up their friends to promote them. With our industry-powered digital marketing platform, we can set up your media plan in minutes. Our team will automatically distribute your music across all the best channels, so you can focus on actually making the music. Submit your music today on our website at mymusicpromoter.com. That's mymusicpromoter.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
The future of medicine is already here. Protect yourself and those around you from the effects of electromagnetic radiation and recharge your body with life energy. This is your chance to take control of your balance, your quality of life, and your future. The effects of syntropic products have been verified from a scientific point of view and can be backed up with research. This is future technology, a biotech enterprise with breakthrough technologies that facilitate the protection, regeneration, and recharging of both human and animal populations. These patented wellness devices can help optimize energy and performance, speed up regeneration, and protect you from the harmful effects of non-thermal e-smog. Get back to feeling your best with a new level of clarity, vitality, and balance with the advanced and effective products of Syntropics. It's as Albert Einstein said, the future is here, and future medicine will be the medicine of frequencies. Get started on your wellness journey by going to advancedwellnesstechnology.com or fringe.fm/bioenergy.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Every moment's like a step unknown to finding all that function. We could burn out like our heroes go, but that's a chance we're taking.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void here live on the Fringe FM, www.fringe.fm. We could always use your support, guys. If you go to fringe.fm and donate, help keep the station going. Probably one of the only people left trying to keep radio alive. They're killing it over across the pond, by the way, with radio. But here, sadly, it's a tradition that I'd like to keep alive, kind of like baseball, you know? But if you want to support, you can do that. Also, if you go to fringe.fm/deep void, I have a free, there's a free download you can get, The Art of Relaxation, and there's other downloads you can get there too. You can also join the Deep Void for $5 and get over 800 and something episodes with awesome guests for only $5 too. You can do that too, if you like. It's tax season. I know some of y'all are getting your checks, right? You're going to go splurge. I got that problem, splurging. For sure. Where are we at here? Oh my God. This is getting intense, man. This is the good stuff. I knew this would be the good stuff, though, when you get to talking about gods and elementals and things like that. So now we're in elementals. Let me see how long this is, though. Really? None of you guys want to call in and chime in on this? Hazard Pie says, I feel like my soul is the most true part of myself. Yeah, for sure. I feel that way, too. Homunculus. What's up? Are you a Wananite? What's up, man? Mason jar. Chris Miner says, this seems intelligent, but it seems like it's based on older information. I think he was smart, but not smart enough. Has some truth, but some nonsense. I'm going to agree with you on that. What is you? You and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals. Let's do it like they do. Yeah. Yeah, you want to know something weird that I was looking up today, too? Because I was going to talk about, like, the Leo energy and stuff, and I don't have very long. I didn't today, just be honest. So, like, I got plenty of time to do it, but not today. And I was thinking, man, what could I talk about in the show tonight? So I started looking up, like, lions, right? Well, the spirit, I was going to talk about the spirit of the lion. And I got some weird information, like the lion, just the lion itself, they mate like 50 times a day. Like that, I had to look at that statistic. I'm like, that cannot be true. They're an endangered species that mates up to 50 times a day. And every time we roll up on a male lion, they're just like passed. That's why they're all like passed out, man. You know, it's a good thing we didn't get that. We got a little bit of that DNA in us for sure, right? Is this thing going to stop? God, I need a sound engineer, right? Elementals. So he is, the spirit says elementals and gods are the same kind of entity structurally, though they differ enormously in personality and behavior. You might say that gods are civilized elementals. So for our description of how the astral bodies and minds of these beings function, we'll use the general term elementals. On one level, elementals are specialized types of theocratic bands. They are very large composite spirits containing thousands of human astral souls very closely linked together. On another, they are sentient creatures in their own right, with personalities and emotions quite different from those ordinary human beings. One thing we want to stress, elementals and humans are not two races of beings, but different forms of one race. The astral DNA template of both is identical, but humans are the individual form and elementals are the composite form. Composite physical life forms exist on Earth. Bees, ants, termites, other social insects are the most intelligent of these. The elementals bear the same relationship to humans as an ordinary honeybee colony does to a primitive solitary bee or wasp. Composite physical life forms exist on Earth. The bees, the ants, the termites, and other social insects are the most intelligent of these. The elementals bear the same relationship to human as the ordinary honeybee colony does to a primitive solitary bee or wasp. Okay. That makes, all across the board, what he just said there, though, makes sense. Only if you've read about elementals and egregores and things like that, whether it's Dr. Stylianos Tetsulis, all the Hermetic texts, all the people that are having out-of-body experiences, all of the writings on elementals, whether it's theosophy or occult books or whatever you're reading, that pretty much explains elementals, right? So he asked the spirit, he said, I've speculated for years that a colony of social insects might have a single soul or a group mind that's much more highly developed than the mind that could fit into the tiny brain of a single individual insect. Certainly the behavior of a whole colony shows much more intelligence than behavior of an individual. And the spirit says, well, the nature of group minds depends on the amount of control they have over their individual members. There are roughly 4 levels of control, though each integrates within the next. These can be verbalized as cooperation, persuasion, coercion, and compulsion. Cooperation is working with others because your mutual interests coincide. and the shared effort is of mutual benefit without major concessions or on the part of either party involved. Persuasion is essentially barter. I'll do this for you if you'll do that for me. Coercion is similar, but the barter is negative. I'll do harm to you unless you do something particular thing for me. Compulsion is direct control of someone that transcends that other person's volition. That's how you control, that's how the crack dealers control the crackheads, you know. Compulsion. So, question, he says, it looks to me as if human societies on Earth operate on all four levels, so they probably have group minds by your definition. No, the Spirit says, earthly societies operate mostly by cooperation and persuasion, with some coercion and only a small amount of compulsion. A bee colony operates entirely by compulsion, almost in the same way that your brain operates your body through the nervous system. And so he says, people don't like coercion and compulsion, so we tend to think that they are among the most important factors governing society. However, you are correct in pointing out that cooperation and persuasion are much more common. The reason we worry about the two negative factors so much is that we have an instinctive aversion for them. And the Spirit says, well, there are two reasons why human societies resist becoming a true composite entity. First, people have highly developed brains and are fully intelligent as individuals. Second, each person has a separate astral soul with an astral will that resists outside control. It is possible to control the minds of living people by psychic compulsion under certain circumstances, but that is very difficult. People strongly resist such control because of their highly developed brains and souls. A bee colony is a composite entity because individual bees don't have large enough brains to support true intelligence and because they don't have individual astral souls. A colony of social insects has a single astral soul that is linked to the body of every individual in it. The brain of a bee has very limited capacity for storing information and little programming for processing data. Instead, the individual uses telepathy to pass information to the astral mind of the hive. This group mind processes and stores the information received from individual bees and does the thinking for the entire hive, passing down its orders by telepathy. The collective mind of a bee colony shows intelligence far beyond the reasoning and memory storage capacity of an individual bee. In fact, in certain narrow areas, this group mind displays a level of intelligence almost equal to that of human beings. One example is the colony's ability to direct the physical changes that individual bees go through during the course of their lives to perform different specialized functions: gathering food, cleaning and repairing the hive, rearing the young, defending the colony from enemies, swarming to produce a new colony, etc. A bee colony is actually better organized in terms of division of labor than a human society. Another example is the colony's ability to control the temperature within the hive, using a biological central heating and air conditioning system. When the group mind perceives that the hive is too hot inside, certain bees are instructed to act as living ventilator fans. They cling to the walls of the passageways that lead to entrances of the hive and circulate cool air by beating their wings. When the hive is too cool, the entrances are sealed with wax, but the bees serving as fans keep on circulating air, which evenly distributes the heat generated by the metabolism of all the bees in the hive. I did not know any of this, by the way. That's pretty interesting. Am I going to look it up to make sure he's right? I'm too lazy for that. That all sounds right. But that's pretty cool. Human societies are superficially similar to composite entities, but they aren't true composites. Because individual people have independent intelligence and will. However, the human astral soul has a strong potential for forming composite entities while it is in a disembodied state. Because souls can literally link themselves together, as was described in the chapter on Theocratic bands. Ugh, that's creepy. I'm having like images of Candyman in my head now. And that crap Monroe talked about when he saw that, like, all these people that had like sex addictions, he saw them all like embodying in this goo and just kind of moving in the astral plane. That's weird. I don't know why my head was thinking about that. I'm having bad dreams now. There's much more compulsion in a theocratic band on the astral plane than any totalitarian society on earth. Because theocrats attach their silver cords to other spirits and control them as directly as the human brain controls the hands. This has all the makings for a really creepy horror film, though, doesn't it? The structure of a theocratic band, as we described it earlier, is similar to a wheel. The spirit controlling the band is the hub, and the subordinate spirits are the spokes. Notice that the world's oldest surviving religion, Vedanta, uses such a spoked wheel as its symbol. The rayed sun used by many other religions in the same symbol, minus the rim of the wheel. However, the rim is extremely important because it indicates that a theocratic band naturally produces a structure of astral matter separate from the individual souls attached to it. That's some pretty creepy stuff. He said, so are you saying that over the course of time, a theocratic band develops its own astral soul and astral mind that is equivalent of the composite astral mind of a bee or an ant colony? And the spirit says, yes. This is another important reason why theocratic spirits don't achieve true immortality. The longer a theocratic band lasts, the more it develops into a composite entity with a mind of its own. At first, the controlling theocrat completely dominates the group mind, but eventually that mind becomes powerful enough to become independent, and the band becomes an elemental. Holy shit. So question, he says, when I hear the term elemental, I think of the Wendigo legend. Several North American Indian mythologies describe the Wendigo as a huge, powerful, disembodied spirit that is capable of both reasoning and speech. However, it behaves like a predatory animal, not a human being. The legends say it eats the souls of the dead on the astral plane and can sometimes kill living people and devour their souls as well. The Wendigo is one of the most frightening spiritual monsters in human mythology. And the spirit says similar beings are described in mythologies from all over the world, but only a few elementals have become as dangerous as the Wendigos. Most of the elementals that have formed on Earth so far have been less dangerous than a large theocratic band controlled by the spirit of some human tyrant. Most elementals that become independent of their creator are no more intelligent than a human infant or a predatory animal. And in most cases, the elemental stays in one place, feeding on the disembodied souls of animals or humans that approach it. It was conditioned to do this while still under the control of human spirits. Like astral vultures. I assume, he says to the spirit, this is why so many myths talk about magic spells to chain evil spirits in one place. And it also explains why primitive religions perform sacrifices and rituals to placate the spirits that inhabited specific places. Elementals lived there, and feeding them made it safer for living people to travel by the place. And the spirit answers and says, well, sometimes the spirit of a place was an elemental. This kind of gets into like... what's the word I'm trying to think? Gordon White talks about it a lot. Think of it in a minute. The spirit of a place was an elemental, sometimes a theocratic band. It really didn't matter. Both wanted to be fed through sacrifices and rituals. The uninhabited areas where such sacrifices were made were very often places where large-scale religious sacrifices of humans or animals had once been conducted, where a city had once stood, or where large numbers of people had died in a battle or disaster. Any of these activities would have formed theocratic bands, which may have later turned into elementals. Most elementals of this type are not particularly dangerous because they were formed by first or third stage religions and aren't particularly large or powerful. However, the second stage religions that practice mass human sacrifice created theocratic bands that eventually formed elementals of vast power. Second stage theocratic bands had to be extremely large because this was the only way they could exert enough power over their living slave populations to keep the whole society from collapsing. Invariably, such bands quickly became elementals. Many ancient cities that practiced second stage theocratic religion were abandoned after being conquered by their enemies. Carthage is one example, and the Judeo-Christian Bible mentions several more. No one wanted to live on the site for a long time because of the presence of a large and dangerous elemental force. Of course, if people avoided the place long enough, the elemental would die of starvation, making the area safe for human habitation again. The Wendigos were a related phenomenon, except that the elementals didn't remain where they were first formed. The Wendigos had originated in those areas where the Incas, Mayas, and Aztecs practiced second stage theocracy. When a new elemental formed in this region, the other theocratic bands attached to those tribes didn't try to chain it into one place, but worked magic to drive it far away. Some of these banished elementals went all the way to North America and gave rise to the Wendigo legend. Others went to the southern tip of South America, where the Araucanians have similar legends. Similar things have also happened during modern wars. The fate of Hitler and a number of other top Nazi leaders and their theocratic friends on the astral plane after the surrender in Germany in 1945 is an example. So he questions the spirit. He says, there were persistent rumors for many years that Hitler didn't really die at the end of the war, but successfully fled Germany. Ever since I made the breakthrough, I've suspected these rumors might be true, but not in the physical sense. In other words, he did commit suicide in that bunker, but immediately took charge of a band of Nazi theocrats on the astral plane, and is probably still up there today, sustained by the psychic energies of the creeps and misfits who continue to wear the swastika and practice the Nazi creed of bigotry and violence. And the spirit says, well, the truth is much stranger than that. Hitler and hundreds of other Nazi leaders fled as disembodied spirits to Japan to assist their theocratic allies there. They hoped that a D-Day type invasion of Japan would prove too costly to the allies, and the Japanese fascism would survive after a negotiated peace. At this point, both the German and Japanese theocrats had access to enormous amounts of energy from the millions of victims of World War II, and they deliberately manipulated the American government into dropping the atomic bomb to provide them with even more victims. Their hope was to create an elemental and use its vast psychic power either to turn defeat into victory on Earth plane or to flee to another world. Fortunately, the attempt failed, and the theocrats involved were devoured by the entity they were trying to create. And this elemental still survives on the astral plane and will become an important focal point in the struggle between the Invisible College and the theocrats in the future. Oh man, this is getting out there, dude. Like, listen, all right. The out of body experience is real. I have to ground myself right now, okay? Because I'm starting to get lost in all this. The out of body experience is real. The astral plane, the out of body experience is real. What we call the astral plane and what they're calling it, I don't know. There's some blurred stuff going on. Elementals, I believe, are a real thing too, but I don't know about this. Like this, there's a lot in this, you know, to decrypt, decipher. This is a lot. So one thing I read into what you said about the Nazi leaders is that theocrats themselves may be natural enemies of the elementals. And the spirit says this is quite true. That's why the third and fourth stages of theocratic religion were invented to allow theocratic bands to remain stable on the astral plane for long periods of time. However, a theocratic spirit has to reincarnate, or else its bands will eventually turn into an elemental. That's a fact of nature. The fact that human beings tend to create a technology that allows the planet's total population to increase steadily is another factor preventing theocratic spirits from becoming truly immortal. Of course, a rising population generates new souls in large numbers, which in turn increases the number of souls on the astral planes that are easy prey for theocratic spirits. But this superabundance of souls is a mixed blessing because it encourages theocratic bands to grow so large they grow out of control and turn into elementals. This is why theocratic religions often try to inhibit technological progress, but such a policy is self-limiting. Whew. I'm going to try to finish this chapter and then roll out. I see what you mean. If the theocrats keep their particular society from developing technology at the same rate as neighboring societies, it's likely to be conquered from the outside. Can you tell me why human beings have this instinctive drive to achieve technological process? This is a long answer, but it's the last one. Okay. The cause of technological process is a process of Darwinian natural selection, which allows a society to survive natural disasters, defeat enemies in war, and develop the natural resources available to it more fully. All these give it an advantage over any society that doesn't do these things. Cultures that encourage their members to work for technological progress survive better than those that don't. This particular cycle contains the seeds of its own destruction. Technological advancement on a primitive planet like Earth invariably causes the human population to increase to the point where exploitation of natural resources seriously upsets the planet's ecological balances. Most people on Earth are now aware that a population bomb is ticking towards explosion. Scientists are predicting that this rape of the planet's resources will destroy the Earth's biosphere and cause the extinction of the human species, or at least destroy technological civilization. Others, more optimistic, they predict that almost everyone in the underdeveloped countries will die of plagues and famines, but the advanced nations will survive the crisis with most of their population and technology intact. Biologists on Earth already know that population explosions in a particular species followed by massive die-offs are quite common and usually are not a sign that the species is headed for extinction. Overpopulation, die-off cycles, are commonest in successful species that are trying to extend their range but are blocked by environmental barriers. The process often creates new variants of the species that can survive in a wider variety of environments. We are reasonably sure from our experience on other planets that Earth's biosphere is not so fragile that it can be destroyed by the actions of human beings, except possibly by a massive nuclear war. We are also reassured by the fact that the populations of all technological advanced societies on Earth are already reasonably stable. Even in countries like the Soviet Union, where the official government policy is to encourage population growth. However, we still broadcast telepathic messages that urge people to take an alarmist position on overpopulation and possible destruction of the Earth's biosphere. If theocratic spirits and elementals didn't exist, the massive cycle of poverty and overpopulation, which now afflicts the majority of the inhabitants of this planet, wouldn't exist either. Political radicals are partly correct when they blame first world greed for third world poverty. But economic imperialism is itself just another effect of the same root cause. A theocratic plot to swell the Earth's population to the point where massive die-offs occur. We've already described how an increasing population forms new souls. If there's an abundance of human astral souls at a low stage of development in the astral plane for the theocratics to recruit or feed upon, theocratic bands tend to grow larger and larger, making the creation of new elementals more common. Right now, Earth has more elemental spirits than it ever had before in history, and this is a very dangerous situation. As long as the Earth's population goes on increasing, the existing elementals and theocratic bands have a steady supply of new souls to feed upon or recruit. But when massive humans die off, when those die-offs occur, vast numbers of new souls will be stranded on the astral plane at once. This overabundance of souls will cause thousands of embryonic elemental spirits to start growing very rapidly towards adulthood. Once a young elemental reaches a certain critical mass, it becomes able to seize and capture souls psychokinetically against their will. Sometimes that ordinary theocratic bands cannot do because they lack the necessary psychic energy. As such, an elemental grows in size and psychic power. It can forcefully capture disembodied souls at a higher and higher stage of spiritual development. If it becomes big enough, it is able to devour ordinary theocratic bands and finally even the astral souls of living humans. And if this happens, then most of the planet's human population most of the planets, I think that's planets as a typo. The most of the planet's human population, living and disembodied, can end up being taken over and eventually devoured by a small number of elementals. These adult elementals are then forced to leave their planet of origin in search of a new food supply. They can travel interstellar distances. Advanced civilizations can usually defend themselves against such beings, but they can depopulate whole planets at a lower stage of civilization very easily. This is why the Invisible College is intervening in the evolution of human society on Earth. I should have some dark, ominous music in the background, right? The natural order of the universe is for people, not necessarily in Earth-type human bodies, to start developing an advanced technology under the control of theocratic spirits. Such a world never gets beyond the second stage of theocratic religion, but it does develop enough technology to allow the human population to reach into billions. When it does, a nuclear or biological war suddenly reduces the population, and the elementals and the theocrats start fighting amongst themselves over who controls the planet and which elementals will reach adulthood. Within a few years after this point is reached, the adult elementals leave the planet and go off into deep space. Sometimes the sudden growth and violent end of the human civilization destroys the planet's biosphere, and sometimes the biosphere survives but human beings do not. More commonly, a few living people and a few theocratic spirits survive. The whole cycle begins again and runs into course over periods of thousands of years. And that was elementals. Holy hell, right? And Jesus. Okay, so there's 150 sci-fi movies in this story. I'll have to say this, man. Like, this guy that wrote this book has one hell of a brain. Like, if he should have made so much money writing sci-fi novels off all this stuff. But apparently, he wants to spread this message. I don't know. That was probably the freakiest thing I've ever read. Like, if you could see all the stuff that was going through my mind as I was reading this, it's like, we got to play Cthulhu, right? I'm betting more than anything that is the, probably one of the chapters that scared the shit out of Gareth. Brother, like, I don't think for a minute that stuff is remotely true, okay? But it does sound, it could be. There's always a probability something like this is true. But this sounds like a whole bunch of Cthulhus eating a whole bunch of Cthulhus, right? We got to get out of here. Please support the Fringe FM, support what we're doing here so we can keep this going as much as possible. And if you want to contact Gareth, who is our hero, who has initiated this whole process, we love you, brother. And stay in touch with us. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Here's some Cthulhu by Gunship. I have to, man. It just sounds right. Good night, y'all. Sweet dreams.
Again beneath his sway.